welcome back to my channel. Welcome to the second vlog in my 3 reading vlog series for this book, It by Stephen King. In this reading vlog, I read more of like the middle of the book and just share my thoughts on it, and I get so close to the end. So on to the second reading vlog. Hello everyone. I need to make this quick because my phone is gonna fall. I looked at it wrong. That chapter was only 80 something pages, not like 113. It ended on page 620, as you can see. So I just read to page 620. And that chapter 11, called Walking Tours, that was basically each member of the Losers Club, like all their afternoons where they went by themselves and walked around somewhere, like when Mike told them to go walk around somewhere that they like saw Pennywise or they felt they were drawn to. It started out with Ben. Ben went to the library and Pennywise showed up at the library and was like, he started yelling that like Ben killed all these kids and that it was Ben's fault. And then Ben started to freak out and he left. And then it was Eddie's, and Eddie went to this old place called like the Tracker Brothers Truck Depot, because he said that he used to watch boys play baseball there, and he was never allowed to play baseball because his mother never allowed him to. But then Patrick Hockstetter and the Leper and Greta Bowie, they're all dead in 1985, which is when the adult chapters are taking place. They all show up and are like deformed and like corpses, and he freaks out, and the body of one of the Tracker brothers shows up and they just like run him out. Like he starts running, and then Beverly goes back to her childhood apartment, and because the doorbell says Marsh on it, so she's like assuming that her dad's gonna be there, but he's not there. There's this weird like woman, like old woman there, and she's like, do you want some tea? So then Beverly sits down to have tea with her, and she starts to like turn into this witch like in front of Beverly's eyes, and then Beverly realizes the whole apartment is like made out of candy and stuff, and she's like, oh, it's like Hansel and Gretel. Apparently Hansel and Gretel like really scared Bev when she was a kid, so she realizes like this whole like her being in her old apartment is like Hansel and Gretel, and she gets out and she runs across the street, and then this balloon like crosses her calf. And for Bev, you get Bill's, and Bill, he's like walking around and he sees this kid on this skateboard, and he asks him like if he's ever heard voices in the sewers, and the kid says yes, and he's just talking to the kid for a while, and then he tries to ride the kid's skateboard, which was interesting. And then Bill is like, he debates going back to his childhood home, but he doesn't think that like that's a good idea, so he just starts walking, and he sees this little girl, and he's like, he asks the little girl what is her favorite store in town, and she says that her favorite store is called Secondhand Rose Secondhand Clothes. So he goes there, and he's standing in front of the store, and he sees Silver in the store's window. Crazy. So then he goes into the store, and he sees the clerk, who the clerk in the store in the movie is played by Stephen King. Anyway, so he goes into the store and he buys the bike, and he calls Mike, and he's like, can I bring the bike to your house? And Mike's like, yeah, you can. Bill brings the bike to Mike's house, and him and Mike fix up the bike, fix up Silver, make it all look nice, like put air in the tires, and then they eat dinner, and then they're sitting there, and Bill like has this sentence in his head, and the sentence is, let me read it to you. The sentence is, he thrusts his fist against the post and still insists he sees the ghost. Basically that sentence, like Bill writes it down, and he's like, I don't know why this is stuck in my head, and he asks Mike, and Mike is like, that sentence is like a tongue twister that they make people with stutters say, or like people with speech impediments, they make them say that because it's really hard to say. And Mike is like, yeah, in the summer of '58, like you would just mumble that to yourself, and like your mom really wanted you to be able to say that. And then Bill is like, I don't remember, and he's like so upset because he doesn't remember that. But yeah, that chapter was really good. The next chapter is chapter 12, 3 Unwanted Guests. I think it's about the bullies. So this chapter is like 40 something pages. Maybe I'll read that chapter tonight. I'm gonna take a break because I've been reading for like 3 hours. But I'm gonna take a break and we'll see if I read some more tonight. Hello everyone. Morning. Wow, I look crazy right now. I have my coffee, I have my book. It is currently officially June 9th, so we've been reading for 9 days. 9 days of reading. I'm on page 646. The last chapter I read last night, it was called 3 Uninvited Guests. And that one was interesting because it was basically telling you about Henry Bowers in the mental institute and like what he's been doing there, and when he sees Victor Chris under the bed. And then it was telling you about Tom, Beverly's husband, who like beats up her friend and finds out where she is and gets on a plane to Derry. And then Bill's wife, Audra, also like leaves her job and gets on a plane to Derry. So 3 people are there. That's great. We're on Derry, the 3rd interlude now. So I'm gonna jump into that and see if I can't get to page 700 today. Okay, let me do a little update before I read the next chapter. I just read Derry, the 3rd interlude. There's like a little part, take my AirPods out. You get like a little part of this history of Derry that Mike is writing. I've mentioned Mike is a librarian and he's like talking to a bunch of the older people in town to like try to make a history of the town of Derry, just finding out a lot of like weird things. And he figures out that like the fire at the Black Spot ended when Pennywise was there in the 30s, and then the fire at the Kitchener Iron Works ended when Pennywise was there in like the early 1900s. So he's like, it seems like Pennywise always leaves after there's a big like tragedy. He's like, it also seems like there has to be a big tragedy to get him to show up, because he's talking about this thing where there was this like massacre in town of the Bradley gang, and that like right after that massacre is when Pennywise showed up. So basically he goes to this man at a convenience store. His name is Norbert Keene, and he's asking him, Mike is asking him about like what happened. And basically there was this gang of like people called the Bradley gang, and they went into this guy's store asking for a ton of ammunition, and then the whole like townsfolk and town people all got their guns and like shot them dead in the street. Absolutely insane. Then Mike is like, did you see anyone like weird? And the guy's like, oh, you mean the clown? So then Mike is like, what the freak? Like, you know about the clown? And he's like, yeah, a lot of people know about the clown. And he's like, he's talking about how a bunch of people saw him and they just thought that he was with the carnival. But then they talked about how they said at the end of this chapter, Norbert was talking to like one of his friends because his friend saw Pennywise, and his friend said that it came to him all at once that it was 2:25 in the afternoon when the shooting started, and the sun was out, but that clown didn't cast any shadow, no shadow at all. How he was floating like out of an airplane, shooting at the cars. So yeah, that's interesting little backstory going on. The next part I am at is called 4 July of 1958. Next chapter is about like 50 pages, so I'm gonna see if I can get this done, and then we'll see what I do after that. Hello everyone. We have some things to discuss. So it's the next day, it's June 10th today. I read two chapters since I last updated. I'm now on chapter 15. The Smoke Hole was Derry, the 3rd interlude. That chapter started with this like history that Mike is writing. I read that. He's just like, I told you about the massacre and all that stuff. And then I didn't put a tab, so I didn't realize that I read this part. Then it says part 4, July of 1958. And that starts the apocalyptic rock fight. So I read that one. That chapter was sad actually, because you hear about how Henry Bowers killed Mike's dog, Mr. Chips, and it's really, really sad actually. And they're basically just talking about like this, like the rock fight is when Mike is like officially inducted into the Losers Club. So like Mike is running for his life from Henry and Victor and like all his friends. He's running for his life and they're like trying to catch him, and he runs into this it's this place called the Gravel Pit. And there's like a bunch of rocks and gravel and stuff on the ground. So then the Losers Club is there and they're gonna like set off like fireworks, or like they're like setting something off, and then Bill like hears something and he's like, wait, like we have to get ready. So they start to get ready for a fight, and then Mike comes running and then he sees the losers and he's like, Henry killed my dog. And then all the losers like start pelting Henry and his friends with these rocks, and they have this big rock fight. The losers end up running away after a while, and Mike is like, wow, like thanks for helping me, guys. And then now Mike is like officially in the club. Okay, the chapter that I just read called The Album, that was basically like, so if you've seen the part in the miniseries, I haven't seen the miniseries. I have seen it, chapter 1 and chapter 2 from 2017 and 2019. I've seen both of those movies multiple times and I love them both. The little bit that I have seen of the miniseries from 1990s, it is a lot like the book. I feel like the newer movies like strayed away from the book more than the miniseries. But I will give you my final opinion on that, like after I watch them. But there was a scene where they were all the adult losers went to meet Mike back at the library. It was 7:00. This was after their afternoon of like exploring the town. They go meet back. They all bring alcohol, which was funny. And they all made fun of Eddie because he brought like prune juice. And he was like, it's so healthy for you. So they all made fun of him. And then Mike, they're in the library and Mike goes to the fridge to go get beer. And he sees the decapitated head of Stanley in his fridge. But it's Stanley as a child. And he opens the fridge and a bunch of balloons come out, and then he sees Stanley's decapitated head, and it's like his mouth is filled with like feathers because Mike keeps seeing the birds, and it's like he said that Stanley is like trying to talk, but his mouth is full of feathers. He freaks out, he shuts the refrigerator, and then he's like, guys, come in here, and they all walk in there and they're like, what's going on? And then we get a flashback to when the Losers Club is sitting in the Barrens. It's July 6th and they're building their clubhouse, or like underground clubhouse. Mike brings this photo album that his dad has because he's like, I've seen the clown before and I wanted to see where I saw the clown before. So he starts looking in this photo album and he's showing the losers his photo album, and the photos start to move just like they did in Bill's room with Georgie's school photo. The photos start to move, and Pennywise is in all the photos, and he's in one, and he starts moving and he jumps on this light pole and like climbs up it. So his face is like the face of the picture, and his nose, like his clown nose, starts to like bulge out of the photo. And they all freak out, and then Stanley starts to freak out and he's like, no, and then Bill's like, this is exactly what the clown wants, like calm down. And I'm gonna read you the end of this chapter. This is like Bill thinking, but I'm gonna read it to you. Because in some measure, at least he was using them, using his friends, risking their lives to settle the score for his dead brother. And was that even the bottom? No, because George was dead, and if revenge could be exacted at all, Bill suspected it could only be exacted on behalf of the living. And what did that make him? A selfish little shit waving a tin sword and trying to make himself look like King Arthur. To himself, this is the stuff adults have to think about. I never want to grow up. His resolve was still strong, but it was a bitter resolve. That's kind of sad. Isn't that kind of sad? Bill wants revenge. Like, that is Bill's reasoning for wanting to kill Pennywise. Bill wants revenge for Georgie, which is totally understandable. But then, I feel like he feels bad. I feel like he feels bad for dragging, the rest of the losers into this. But I feel like they all have a reason to kill Pennywise, too. I don't know, but I'm on page 742. So 742 out of 1100. I have like 400 pages left. I feel like this is like a thick chunk of book to have left, but I feel like I'm really making my way through. It's the 10th right now, so I've been reading this for 10 days, and I really want to like finish it by the 14th because then it would be like 2 weeks exactly, but we'll see. I'm gonna chill for a while. I'm definitely gonna read more today, but I think I'm gonna take a break. Okay, so I just looked at the last chapter. I'm on chapter, what is this chapter? I'm on chapter 15, and there's 23 chapters. So my ambiance is so loud in the back, but I just read the chapter, or the title of the last chapter, and I'm gonna cry already. Hello everyone, I thought I would update really quick before I move on to the next chapter. So I just read chapter 16, The Smoke Hole. It was very interesting. So basically what happened is like all the losers are still at the library with Mike and they're talking, and then all of a sudden Richie like has this epiphany and he's like, wait, he's like, this like the burning in my contacts, and he's like remembering what it was from. And he remembers that it was from this ceremony that they performed when they were kids called, I guess it was called the Smoke Hole Ceremony. And basically it was like, they read about it in a book, and like the people that were like there in the town thousands of years ago, like they did this ceremony. And basically they filled their clubhouse with like fire and smoke, and they sat in there, and if you could sit in there with the smoke for long enough, you would like see visions and stuff. Talking about this, but there is a quote that I wanted to read to you. It happens in like the very beginning. It's Richie talking about how like he's an adult now and how he's no longer a kid, and it says, how do you stop being a kid all at once with a big explosive bang like one of the clown's trick balloons with the Barma Shave slogans on the side? The kid in you just leaks out like the air out of a tire, and one day you look in a mirror and there's a grown-up standing back at you. I like that quote. Anyway, so it goes back into like a flashback where they perform this ceremony, and all the losers are in the clubhouse and they all get out except for Richie and Mike. And Richie and Mike have this like hallucination that they were in the Barrens like millions of years ago, or like a really, really long time ago before anyone was ever in Derry. And they see the origin of it. Like they see Pennywise come down out of the sky and like in a meteor or something, and he like shoots a giant hole in the ground. They see that, and that's where that chapter ends. Now we're on chapter 16, Eddie's Bad Break. I love Eddie's chapters because I feel like they're so funny. Like he's so funny as a character, and he's so, I don't know, I just think he's one of my favorite characters. But I'm gonna keep reading. This next chapter ends on page like 820, so I'm just gonna see how far I can get today. I'm not really sure. I have like 390 pages left-ish, so we're gonna see how much we can get done. Hello guys, good morning. It is June 12th. It is the next day. I'm wearing the same thing, but it is the next day. I read 2 chapters, I think, without updating. So I just read a chapter called Another Missing Person and the Death of Patrick Hockstetter. That chapter was crazy. So basically, Patrick Hockstetter, they've talked about him a lot in this book. He's like kind of like a little side character in the movie, but they've talked about him a lot. And he's basically crazy. Like they talk about him being crazier than Henry Bowers, and like no one really hangs out with him, but like right at the very end of like when things are about to start ramping up, Henry like starts to hang out with Patrick. And basically it just talks about how Beverly witnessed Patrick's death. Like so Patrick killed his little brother. Yeah, he's a psychopath. And he has this like refrigerator that he puts these like dead animals in, and Beverly saw him and she was like hiding, and all of a sudden he opens his like death refrigerator thing, and a bunch of leeches come out, because leeches are like what he's most afraid of, and they like get on him and start like being leeches on him pretty much. And then Pennywise shows up and kills him, and Beverly saw that, and she's telling the rest of the losers like what happened. Now we're on chapter 18 called The Bullseye. I think I'm going to start this chapter because the end of this chapter is the 4th interlude, I believe. The end of this chapter is the 4th interlude, so we're gonna read to there. I don't know how much reading I'll get done today, but it's the 12th. I wanted to have it done by the 14th, and I'm currently on page 854, so I feel like we're doing good. We're almost done. I'm scared. I'm gonna keep reading. Hey guys, I have an update. Look at how far I am into the book. Okay, so I'm officially 892 pages in. Let me show y'all. I'm officially on almost page 900, but Derry, the 4th interlude. This is crazy. I have like 200 and maybe a little over 300 pages left. What just happened? I feel like the action is like really starting to pick up now. So we just got a chapter, and the chapter was called Bullseye, I believe it was called. It was a long chapter. It was called The Bullseye, chapter 18. Basically what happened is the losers, they made their silver bullets. They like melted down Ben's silver dollars, and they put them in this mold so that they would be like little silver balls, like little bullets. So they made those, and then they went to the house on Nebel Street because that's where they saw it as a werewolf, and silver bullets will like kill werewolves. Do you see? So they were like, let's go to the house on Nebel Street and see if he's there as a werewolf. So they go, and they're all kind of freaked out, and it's scary, and they like, oh, there's the 3 doors, and they open the 3 doors. The last door, they open it, it's a bathroom, and like the toilet is like exploded, like something like someone went into it kind of thing, you know? So then they're like, that's where it's coming from, is the sewers and the drains, and like that's how it gets in and out. They're just like in the bathroom, and then Pennywise, Ben can like hear it and see him, and he's like, he's coming, like he's gonna be here. So all of a sudden Pennywise shoots out of the toilet, and he's like, or the drainage pipe or whatever it's called, and he is the werewolf, and they're all freaking out. And then Beverly tries to shoot it, and they're like, Beverly needs to shoot it because she's the best shot out of all of us. So she has her bullets, and she tries to shoot the werewolf. She misses. So then everyone's freaking out, and then Ben like goes to protect Beverly, and he's like running at her, and the werewolf picks him up and cuts his stomach. And so he's freaking out, and he goes and lays in the bathtub, and then eventually Beverly hits it like in the nose, and it like starts bleeding, and then they only had 2 silver bullets. So now they're like, we're out of ammunition. But all of the losers are like, hit it again, like kill it. And she's like faking that she has another silver bullet so that like Pennywise will believe that she has another silver bullet. And she's like, I'm gonna shoot it. And then he goes back into the drain and is like, and they look over the drain and they hear Pennywise saying, I'm gonna kill you all. Like, he's like, kill you all, like through the drain, like they can hear it. So that was crazy. The whole thing was a flashback because Ben was talking about the scar on his stomach that just showed back up when he got the call from Mike to go back to Derry. It's kicking up. This next chapter, the 4th interlude, is very short, so I think I'm going to read that today. Yeah, it's only like 15 pages, and then we get to chapter 19, so I think I'm going to read maybe 1 to 2 more chapters today and try to get like page 950-ish maybe. My audiobook has 7 hours and 44 minutes left, so I don't think I'm going to finish this today. Maybe tomorrow, but that depends on how much I read today. But we're going to keep going with the fourth interlude. Just read Derry, the fourth interlude. It was literally like 8 pages long. It was like an excerpt from the thing that Mike is writing. He's like writing about the history of Derry, and he starts writing about this like massacre that happened. Let me go back to the beginning and see this. So here you can see that's like, when it looks like this, it's like an excerpt of Mike's writing. And he's talking about how he's sitting in the library and he's like drunk and he's writing. And he's like, what would happen if I were to like publish some of the things that I write? And he's talking about like, oh, they'll probably like kill me or something. But then he starts writing about this massacre that happened in 1905. And he says that he was talking to this man in this nursing home who was 18 at the time. Talking to this man named Thorogood. He was talking to this man who was 18 at the time that this massacre happened. And basically, there was a man named Claude Hero who like went into this bar called the Silver Dollar and like killed a bunch of guys in this bar. And then he was like lynched the next day in town. And the man that is telling Mike about this, he's like, yeah, it just felt like fate, and like no one really, like everyone saw it happening and no one really did anything or said anything. And Mike is like, what in the freaking world? You know what I mean? So then he's talking about how Pennywise kills kids and like how he eats and stuff, because the guy that Mike is talking to, Thorogood, was saying that he was in a bar that was like 6 doors down. Like he wasn't there, he was in another bar. And he said that there was this man there, and he starts describing the man, and he's like, he was doing tricks and like being comical and stuff. And Mike is like, okay, so you were in that bar with Pennywise while the other guy was doing that massacre in the Silver Dollar. So then Mike starts writing about why Pennywise called the losers back, and if this has been going on for so long, like that just happened in 1905, why would he call the losers back? Let me read you this quote because I think it's really, really interesting. He says, certainly we have all been taught since earliest childhood that what the monster does when it catches you in the deep wood is eat you. That is perhaps the worst thing we can conceive, but it's really faith that the monsters live on, isn't it? I am led irresistibly, I can't read, to this conclusion. Food may be life, but the source of power is faith, not food. And who is more capable of a total act of faith than a child? But here is the problem. Kids grow up. In the church, power is perpetuated and renewed by a periodic ritualistic act. In Derry, power seems to be perpetuated and renewed by periodic ritualistic acts too. Can it be that it protects itself by the simple fact that as the children grow into adults, they become either incapable of faith or crippled by a sort of spiritual and imaginative arthritis? And he says, yes, I think that's the secret here. And if I make the calls, how much will they remember? How much will they believe? Enough to end this horror once and for all, or only enough to get them killed? They are being called. I know that much. I feel like that's so cool, and I feel like there's so much that has happened in this book, and I think the question is like, why is Pennywise calling the losers back to Derry? Like, why is he calling them back to Derry? And also, why could, like, when all this stuff was happening to the losers in 1958 when they were kids, or like they would be covered in blood, or like the blood coming out of the drain and stuff like that, none of the adults could see it. Like, none of the adults had faith that that was happening, but the kids did. And there's this other quote, and it says, and now that we no longer believe in Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, or Hansel and Gretel, or the troll under the bridge, it is ready for us. Come on back, it says. Come on back, let's finish our business in dairy. Bring your jacks and your marbles and your yo-yos, we'll play. Come on back, and we'll see if you remember the simplest thing of all. How it is to be children, secured in belief and thus afraid of the dark. I feel like this whole page, 908, is just so good. And it really explains a lot about Pennywise, I think, because you start thinking, and you're like, how has Pennywise not been killed yet? You know, like, how has he not been found out or killed yet, or like lynched in the street kind of thing? You're like, why is he still here? And you think about it, and that page talks about it a lot, but it's like, only the children have faith that he's there, like believe that he's there. The adults, like a lot of the adults that have talked about it in this book are like, yeah, he's there, but like we only saw him once, or like you never see him, or like stuff like that. And it's because they don't have like full faith that he's there, so they don't see him. But like the kids believe anything, because they don't really have, like, they don't really know, like they just blindly believe it because they're like 10 years old. And then Pennywise can like show himself to them and like be all these crazy things, be this clown, be this werewolf, be this mummy. And then when the kids grow up into adults, they're like, there's no way that happened, and they like don't remember it, kind of thing. I just think that's so interesting. Like this whole page 908, I'm gonna dog ear it. I'm dog earing this page. I love this page. Oh, that's against my rules. I usually don't dog ear pages, but that was a great page. The massacre that he was writing about, I was kind of confused for a while, but I really like how that little chapter ended up. It was like less than 20 pages. But the next part I'm at is part 5, the ritual of Chud. I remember this from the movie, the whole ritual that they have to do. It's kind of different, I think, in the book from what they described it. I think they've described it only a little bit. They've only described the ritual a little bit, but it had to do with like making the clown laugh, like telling jokes, and the clown has to laugh before they laugh. I think that's the ritual that they're gonna do, but I'm going to take a little break, and then maybe I will try to read another chapter today, but we will see. Thank you so much for watching that reading vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week is the last installment in this little reading vlog series that I have going on. You'll see me read the end of this book and my final thoughts on this book. So I hope you stay tuned for next week. Remember to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you guys later. Bye!